Sure. Video 9. The role of key players in water issues and water conflicts. Last lesson or two, we've had a look at kind of the physical supply of water stores globally. We've had a look at the distribution. Then we've had a look at, well, that's one side of the seesaw, but on the other side of the seesaw, you've got rising demand from industry, agriculture. You know, we've used that cheesy one-liner that water is the lubricant of development and the source of life. So you need it in manufacturing products, energy extraction and supply, but also your domestic users like for sanitation, health, and also the environment as well. Yeah, you know, we can damage the environment obviously by polluting or over abstracting. This lesson is. So let's get my little pen out. Here we go. Ooh. Is mainly concerned with this, and it seems like a small section on the spec, but I think now we're in year 13. You know, paper 3 will be looming. That's going to test your skills and your ability to make synoptic links. Now, synoptic links can be links made between topics and understanding kind of how what seem like unconnected topics are actually connected in lots of different ways. And if we are to understand the world, then geographers, you know, we need context. We want to understand the world in its entirety, not just box it up into little bits. But another way of making synoptic links is to consider what I call the PAF, which sounds a bit daft, and it probably is. Players, actions, and futures. And we've touched on it in year 12, but this is going to be the point where it kicks in, and we'll look at it in a lot more detail and get confidence in discussing issues, you know, considering different people and different stakeholders, different key players don't always share the same view on things. So how do we use that and integrate it into his answers? Well, first of all, who are the key players? The fact that depending on the key player, the attitudes, the values, and the motives will differ. For instance, really quickly, energy companies' motives are primarily going to be concerned with energy extraction and profit. Yeah. An NGO such as Greenpeace or WaterAid, their attitude, values and motives towards the energy companies are probably going to be one of, it's going to be a contrasting opinion, you know, because they value the environment and people that haven't got access to clean and safe water. So if the energy companies are doing things like polluting the environment, polluting water supplies, then they're going to have obviously conflicting viewpoints, aren't they? Then we can think of, well, what actual power have they got? What is their action? What is their role? All right. So in this example, the energy companies will extract energy. They might pollute water sources as a side effect of that. NGOs' power and role is one of influence and campaigning. Quite often, some NGOs like WaterAid will actually have a hands-on strategy, and they will actually go and try and solve some of these problems in the developing world. And then obviously a combination of all of these factors impact on the future. Yep. So what we're going to know, we're going to types of key players and stakeholders. There's lots of different types. You could come across any of these in paper 3, but you also need to have a few up your sleeve for paper 1 as well. Recognise that they have different values, attitudes and opinions, different roles. They've also got different levels of power and influence. So national governments probably have more power than users and communities, for instance. How their actions and their role can create winners and losers. Some people benefit and get what they want, some people lose, and this can have an impact on the future. A little look at what factors come into play to cause disagreements, but there's not going to be much new here. It's this seesaw idea that we've talked about in lesson, where if we've got diminishing supply and rising demand, that's obviously going to put a strain on sources, water sources. And then Middle East and possibly Colorado River very quickly as a couple of case study examples. Okie pokey, give it a title, strap yourselves in, let's go. Right, first bit is going to be looking at players. So what I want you to do is draw this table. Yep, it'll help you frame your kind of ideas towards what players do and why they do it. So key player or stakeholder, a name, a list. You can add to this table as we go through the topic if you want. Type of player. So for instance, Yorkshire Water or UK based water companies, what are they? Well, they're a private water company but they're regulated by the government, so they can't just do what they want. Values and motives. Well, it's a bit of a mix, this one, for UK based water companies. Because they're regulated by the government, they've got to invest a percentage of their income in water infrastructure, in fixing leaks, you know, in ensuring that we've got a clean and safe supply. It's got to be affordable for the users. They can't just go and charge whatever they want. They've got to make a bit of profit though, because if they don't make profit then they'll go bankrupt because they are a private company. And they're also going to be regulated with kind of what they can do and if they do any harm to the environment. Yep. So they are quite tightly regulated in this country by the government. Alright. What do? Provide the water technology and maintain the water infrastructure to ensure a clean pipe supply to people and businesses. Compare that with a water company in Bolivia called Agua del Tenare. It's a private water company based in Bolivia, developing country. Values and motives, well, really, profit. The government sold this company the water rights, and what did they do? Increase the water price to the urban poor by 20%. And then another key player, communities and citizens weren't having it and they rioted, protested and kicked off, and the government backpedaled. Alright. So, pause the video, draw the table. Right then, key players. I've scattered just a few random ones around here. Some of these we're gonna watch some videos in lessons, so it's kind of an introduction. But just to give you an idea about kind of the variety of these key players, and depending on the topic and the issue, your key players are going to change. All right. So NGOs such as WaterAid, what do? The values are obviously helping people. It's a charitable company solving people's water supply and supply issues in the developing world. How do? They fundraise, they raise awareness, and then they actually have a hands-on approach in some cases. You know, for instance, in Nairobi in Kenya, go and build standpipes, communal shower blocks. So that's the role. Also in Kenya, I've got an example just here, illegal water sellers and cartels. So you can see there's people just on the street with these barrels or buckets or whatever you want to call it. They're not legal, they have not got permission from the government. You know, they try and monopolise the industry as well. They go and stand on a street corner, sell the water and make a profit. I'll put these three together actually, it makes sense. Because we've looked at Nairobi and Kenya as a little case study, haven't we? So Nairobi Water, that's their logo, improving reliability, obviously funded by the World Bank, and they've tried to solve the water supply problems by providing a water obviously providing people in the slums with a supply. They do sell it. People can actually pay by card as well, so yeah, and pay by the mobile phone. But it's not really regulated very tightly by the government. Alright. Okie dokie, who else we got? Like I say, water companies in this country may be very different to water companies in developing countries. Alright. Bolivian water company Agua del Tenare, motivations profit. Yorkshire Water, one of their motivations profit, but they've probably got a range of kind of motives because they're regulated by the government. Alright, so the government can obviously pass laws and use law to decide what water companies can do and what they can't do. They also pass laws like hosepipe bans as well in times of drought. And then at an higher level, we've got an IGO such as the United Nations. Their values, attitudes and opinions, you know, peace and security, sustainable development, human rights, humanitarian assistance. So if we apply that to water, yeah, they want water to everybody to have access to clean and safe water as a human right. Pretty simple, really. All right then. I mean, that should give you a bit of an overview of some of these players. Yeah, what type of player are they? What United Nations is an IGO, WaterAid's an NGO or a charity. Illegal cartels, well, illegal cartels, I guess. Yeah, the values and motives will change. If you've not got them filled in, then have a think. Fill them in, right? Right, so on this issue of conflict then, water conflicts. First of all, I want to do a little bit on, well, what factors increase the kind of potential for conflict? Alright, what's going on for you? Oh my god. Draw. Right. Oh, that's irritating. Right then. And not much of this should be new. Think of your seesaw. What causes this bit in the middle where there's a pressure point and a need for management? So this is where there's potential conflict or disagreements between different players. Alright. First one is the diminishing supply. So if we think of a seesaw, freshwater supply is decreasing. Well, why is that? Climate change at some latitudes affecting rainfall levels. Deteriorating quality, you could argue that's connected to rising demands as well. You know, if we're polluting rivers, if we're getting aquifers that are being kind of seeing saltwater ingress or incursion, then that's going to decrease the quality as well. And also upstream versus downstream users. If we've got people upstream building dams, then that's going to diminish the supply for users downstream. On the other side of the seesaw, you've got your rising demands. Last couple of lessons, population growth, economic development. I could also probably add agricultural uses, you know, is the biggest user. Domestic users through rising living standards. Energy sectors now playing a part, yeah, all come under economic development. So you could break that up by sector to understand that in a little bit more detail. But remember, water is the lubricant of development and the source of life. So yeah, big demander is economic development. And then we can throw in another dimension and think of, well, these different players that we've just referred to, like, obviously, they're going to have competing values, competing interests, aren't they? So, there's two different types which links us to as first keyword. The first type is your disputes internationally, alright? So, for instance, USA dammed off the Colorado River, prevented it flowing into Mexico. That's an international kind of disagreement. The Mexicans aren't happy about it, but there's not a lot they can do. Alright. Another international agreement. Turkey built the Ataturk Dam as part of the GAP project. Dammed off the Euphrates River. Yep. Downstream countries such as Iraq and Syria. Again, international dispute, not happy. You've also got conflicts within a basin as well, though. So, for instance, another example we're going to look at is the Colorado River. Upper basin states such as Colorado, Wyoming, they obviously within the same country, the USA, but you know, they needed to allow the lower basin states to have a water supply as well and not just dam it all off. such as Arizona, California, etc. So you can have internal conflicts within countries as well, alright? And if we go back to as keywords, right, transnational versus transboundary. Well, trans just means across, really. So transnational means across borders, across countries. Yep. Mexico versus the USA dispute is a transnational dispute. Turkey versus Iraq and Syria. Yep. Across countries, transnational. And you think, well, why is that? Well, quite simple. It's a physical geography. Rivers flow from one country. You know, they don't take into account, oh, there's a border there, I better stop. You know, rivers flow where they flow, and they just happen to cross borders and flow from one country to another. It also happens as well with aquifers, because aquifers under the ground, you know, can span under different countries. So if one country has got the technology to abstract the aquifer, yeah, the water table will fall, and that makes it more difficult for the neighbouring country to also access the same aquifer. Alright, transboundary, like I say, it could be across countries, between countries, or more likely, if you're using the word transboundary, you're going to be referring to within a country. Alright, so best example of that is the Colorado River with the upper basin and lower drainage basin states. Yeah. But clear, yeah, just to be precise with terminology. We'll have a look at these other two pairs of keywords in a minute. Right then, give it a bit of a subheading. The Middle East: Turkey, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Iraq, Iran and Syria. These are the main countries that we're going to look at. I'm just going to use a few maps here just to set the scene. Right, let's have a look at this one. Well, this is the Middle East. And we've already looked at it as a case study. It's at a latitude where it's arid or semi-arid. Yeah, a lot of desert, very hot. Outputs from drainage basin through evapotranspiration are very high. And there's a physical lack of freshwater stores and flows, as it is. Lack of rainfall. Experiencing drought, and it's predicted to get worse in the future. So think about your seesaw, the physical supply. Yeah, it's strained area that's semi-arid or arid, and drought. Let's have a look at another one. What's this one? Right. Ooh, this is quite an interesting map. If you look at your freshwater flows and stores that these countries have got access to, you've got the Euphrates and the Tigris. Euphrates and the Tigris both have their source in Turkey, and then they flow south through Syria and downstream countries, Iraq. I thought it flowed through Iran as well. Maybe I was mistaken on that front. Maybe Iran doesn't have nothing to do with this. Yeah, but Syria and Iraq in particular. All right, and obviously, since about 2013, ISIS have been on the rampage, doing naughty things that are evil, chopping people's heads off. You know, not a nice, yeah, to say the least. Not a nice organisation, if you like. But where did they were quite clever in terms of kind of the military knowledge, if you like, because a lot of these countries, it's nothing but desert. It's a lot of sand, all right, and obviously ISIS weren't interested in sand. Where did they go? What did they take? Or what did they try and control? Well, the first thing they did is they went to major cities on these two rivers, all right, in northern Iraq in particular. I mean, if you just have a look, if you've been watching the news, Raqqa, ISIS stronghold, Mosul, yep, the big two, yep, and if you look, both on the Euphrates and the Tigris, Mosul in particular has, they wanted to control the dam there, yep. remember, water can be used as a weapon as well. So, Raqqa and Mosul, why did ISIS control those cities? Part of it, because they could, but the other part of it was because they had a water supply in a very arid region and they needed it. But if you look, a lot of this, yep, a lot of their stronghold was along or on rivers. Haditha, Samara, yeah, Tikrit. Look at where the red, yeah. Fallujah, Tikrit, Mosul, Raqqa, Deir al-Zari, whatever it's called. Yep. Water as a weapon, very powerful. Middle East. So just be bullet pointing these points, folks, as we go. I'm just setting the scene here. Countries over abstracting aquifers in 2012. USA. But also, look at this. Middle East, nearly all of them. Yep. And just to kind of give a more global international picture, when we say the word water conflict, it's very rare that excuse me, water conflicts result in a military act. So if you look at this graph, you know, 21 extensive military acts where there's been some force used by armies, navies, air forces, 16 small-scale military acts, then 6 hostile. Yep, so it's very rare that this comes to actual war. But what it involves is quite a lot of strong verbal hostility. So giving the verbals, not happy, one country tells another country, look, we're not happy with what you're doing. But then all these columns in blue are actually where there's been some kind of agreement. Alright, so 167 international water treaties. Alright, a strong agreement. Then we've had agreement between industry and other sectors. Yep, official verbal support for people's actions. So, you know, I might not sign an agreement, but one key player said to another key player, "Oh yeah, we like what you're doing there. Thanks for considering us. Happy days." So, yeah, it's not all bad. I mean, one interesting point to note is this graph is slightly outdated. 1948 to 98. Situation's probably changed a little bit because of the kind of increase in water vulnerability. Right then. Middle East as a case study. Case study 1. Give it a title. Conflict 1. Turkey is building of the Ataturk Dam on the Euphrates River. If you need to pause it, then do so. Play it back. Probably found that I'm talking quicker in these videos, so if you do need to pause it and play it back, then you're young adults, I'm sure you can make that decision. Turkey then. Right, and I'm going to bring this an idea of key players' values, attitudes and motives. So, this is Turkey. You can see that the Euphrates and the Tigris, two crucial flows and stores of water for a very arid region. The source is in Turkey. So Turkey can choose to dam the rivers if they wish, and that's obviously going to have an impact in downstream Syria and Iraq that rely on the supply of these rivers, and they have done since Jesus was a small boy. Yeah, so a bit of a background. Well, Turkey built the Ataturk Dam as part of the GAP project. Alright, and we'll just have a picture of it because we like to visualise things in geography. There it is. Ataturk Dam, pretty high tech. Would have cost a lot of money. It's 1.5 kilometres long and 200 metres high. So, you know, it is a high-tech water engineering project. Alright, expensive as well. Now, where did they build it? Where did they actually dam off the Euphrates? Well, in this region of Turkey called southeastern Anatolia, which is very poor, right? It's Turkey's poorest region. So the Turkish government's motives and values and, well, priorities, yeah, was not necessarily to screw over downstream Iraq, but they were thinking about themselves. So, you know, they wanted to create jobs, boost the economy, create hydroelectric power, have a water store for better irrigation, to boost agriculture. And they went ahead and did it. Now, obviously, some people lost. What was their role? Well, the Turkish government funded it and had the power to build it. People lost, so 50 villages were flooded, 20,000 people had to leave their homes, and that's internally, remember, that's the winners and losers within the country, but also transnationally, downstream Iraq and Syria, it reduced stream flow and channel flow by 40% and 60% respectively. Yep. And that caused knock-on problems for Syria because they could no longer generate enough electricity due to the lack of channel flow, if you like. And also Syria retaliated by stopping the flow of a small river back into Turkey called the Orontes. So a bit of a tit for tat, but really Turkey had the power to dam off the river. Yep. Yeah, Middle East, generally speaking, if you have a look at outputs, obviously, Turkey, less than 800 millimeters per year, but as you increasingly move further south, obviously, the climate gets more arid, more hotter, and less rainfall. So that's why these rivers that are complex regimes that begin in one climatic zone are crucial for people and countries in another climatic zone. Yep, because they don't get the rain where the river's flowing. Upstream countries near the source get the rain, and then the river transports it through their country. Right, so that's the first conflict, disagreement. The second one, again, give it a subheading, just make brief bullet points what I'm saying here. I'm just introducing these. Israel versus the Palestinians. I think that's probably one of the best ways to put it. And there's an aquifer under Israel that historically the Palestinians and the Israelis have kind of shared, and is worth noting in this region. You know, I think it's fair to say that Israel and Palestine don't get along too well. A lot of history to it, folks. If you want to research it, then off you go. We've not got time to get into politics. It's for reasons other than access to water supplies, religious reasons in particular. Obviously, Israel is a Jewish state, Palestine is a Muslim state, and let's just say they don't get along too well for a whole range of reasons, and probably take far too long to go into them in this video. I've not got 8 hours. But top and bottom it is, remember, water can be used as a weapon. So let's have a look at the physical geography first of all. Right, here we go. Again, semi-arid part of the world, virgin on arid. Right, but we have got, this is Israel, and this is where the Palestinians live on the Gaza Strip, in this small little piece of land just here. And there are other enclaves as well scattered throughout Israel. But yeah, there's 2 aquifers. The main aquifer just here, and then there's a coastal aquifer, and it's being over abstracted. That's the key point. So if you have a look at the water levels since the 1930s right up to 2007, yep, lots of blue, more water. 1987, let's have a look. The water levels have dropped to less than 2 meters, and then looks like it's got even worse as well. So it's being over abstracted. also the quality. If we have a look at this map, again, West Bank of Israel's here. Or is this just the Gaza Strip? I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. Let's have a look. I think this might be just the Gaza Strip. No, this is the Gaza Strip just here. But either way, the aquifer is under, you know, it's a trans kind of an aquifer that spans under both regions, and you can see the parts nearer the coast have become saline, all right, and then even parts further inland have become what's called brackish, which means kind of a less saltier version. But yeah, the red is really salty, the pink is somewhat salty. Why are these aquifers getting polluted with saltwater ingress? Because they're over abstracting these aquifers. Now, again, be filling your table in for your key players. Bit of a background to this conflict. So for decades, Israel has obtained up to 80% of its water provided by the mountain aquifer, and this aquifer is located in the West Bank. The importance of these aquifers, it provides a third of Israelis' water consumption, alright? It provides 4% of its drinking water. I think they import quite a bit of bottled water for those purposes, but 50% of agricultural water. Yep. Now, if you think of what's been happening to cause this dispute, and again, I'm not taking sides on this. This is an issue that I don't think will ever be sorted between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Certainly don't look like it's going to get better, but couple of points. Israel had a population of 5.5 million people, and they were using 3 to 4 times as much as the 2 million Palestinians. Israel also used some of its power, military, like in terms of military power, to prevent Palestinians digging new wells and deepening old ones. Yeah, so, and also, you know, the Palestinians don't probably help themselves because they're pumping out twice as much from the aquifer as that can safely be withdrawn. All right, so we've got a situation where physical supply is not enough to meet demand. As a result of that, you've got both groups over abstracting more than what the safe level of recharge is, and that's causing saltwater pollution, saltwater ingress, which is lowering the quality. Further point, you've then got, obviously, they've got different values, well, different motives, if you like, and different wants. So obviously the Israeli want water for domestic and agriculture and industry. The Palestinians want a supply mainly for domestic. So, and they're both over abstracting. Right then. The Colorado's a little bit different because it's going to be the case study where it's a trans-boundary and a transnational kind of dispute. So, a bit of a history lesson. Obviously, whenever it was, when the Hoover Dam was built, the 20s, I think, but it's about around about 90, 100 years old. Hoover Dam dammed off the Colorado River, create a store behind Lake Mead, but you can see with the tide marks it's been over abstracted. Right then, well, what happened was, this is also an example of agreement as well, or possible somewhat agreement. So, in 1922, the Colorado River Compact was designed and agreed on, where the upper basin states, if you look at these 3 states of Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah, had to share the water supply with the lower basin states of Nevada, Arizona, and California. And then eventually the Colorado River flowed into the Mexico and the Gulf of California. So you can see here, look, Colorado gets the lion's share, Utah a bit less, Wyoming a bit less. Lower basin states, California, because it was densely populated, we agreed that, you know, that should be a factor as well. So California received a lot, Arizona, Nevada, that didn't have as many people. Yep. Mexico also were entitled to a share. All right. However, the Mexicans argue that the Americans aren't sticking to their agreement because the river doesn't reach the sea. So it's a pretty big clue that the Americans are using that water. Yep. So it's a transnational issue between countries, but it's also an example of a transboundary issue as well, because it's within the USA but between different states. And it has been modified over the years because obviously as populations change, as new key players put pressure on wanting more demand, yeah, and access to water, then, you know, an agreement in 1922 probably needs to look a lot different than agreement in today's world. So it has been adjusted, I think, in 1947, and there's constant ongoing talks. But overall, again, the overall result is the demand. Yep, you can just see from this picture, the demand is not enough to meet the supply, and the level of Lake Mead is falling. Alright. Right. If you need to play that back, it's a bit of a lengthy 137 minutes. Play it back, make notes, bring these to lesson. We'll be watching some videos on Israel-Palestinian kind of conflict, and also we'll be watching quite a few on the Colorado River as well. But I think you've got a good background with that. So yeah, always be thinking, who are the key players? What do they want? What are the attitude and motives? Yeah, what do they want? What is the role? So what do they do? Governments dam rivers. Yep. Communities like in Bolivia can kick off, or can often just be the victims and not have any power. NGOs, generally speaking, want to help people. Yeah, so think about what is important to them, then what do they do? Yep. Because that combination of all those factors affects the future. Okie dokie, have a good one.